everyone, and welcome to Hit and Hustle from IrishSportsDaily.com. I'm your host, Greg Flammang, and with me, as always, is Jamie Uyeyama, Mr. Jamie University. It is Tuesday, June 17th. We're going to talk some more recruiting. There's been some updates since the Power Hour show yesterday that Mike and Jamie went through all of the official visitors. There's been some updates. Some players who are no longer going to visit Notre Dame. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about some upcoming visits for Notre Dame. We'll talk about kind of where we think things stand with some of these guys. Obviously, at this time of year, the information comes very quickly, so things can change even in 24 hours. So we'll talk about all of that. Talk about Jordan Botelho having a pec injury, and he's going to be out for an extended period of time, and a bunch of other things related to Notre Dame football. So thank you, everyone, for tuning in today. If you like what you hear, please hit that like button. Please hit subscribe. Please hit the notification bell, show whatever it is. We are going live. Links to the podcast are in the description below. And as always, the show is brought to you by ESQ Clothing, founded by Notre Dame alum Ge Wang. You've seen ESQ on all of your favorite Notre Dame players and coaches. You've seen them on all those people, Jamie. Be an ESQ customer, like a lot of former NFL players, one of which is Jermichael Finley, posing here with some ESQ swag with his bag, with his young son, Caden Finley, in ESQ. You know, it's almost written in the stars there, Jamie. It's good enough for Jermichael Finley. It's good enough for a lot of former NFL players. It's good enough for Notre Dame football players and coaches, and it's good enough for you. Founded by Notre Dame alum Ge Wang. So I messed up the whole ad read now. It's in a flow. And it's all messed up.
It doesn't matter. Look, the point got across.
You can get your perfect fit in 2025. Perfect fitting suit or sport coat, shirt or bomber jacket, or the perfect tuxedo for wedding season. Check out God's amazing work at esqclothing.com. Book an appointment to upgrade your wardrobe today. Mention ISD and get 10% off your entire purchase. That's esqclothing.com. I should have had the ad read up. I just should have had it ready. And that's a bad job by me. Jay Gris is Greg Flammang, aka Mr. ND Irish representing SoCal. That's right. LB. That's right. My son's all-star team. Son's all-star baseball team. Jamie, how's it going? How's it going? The visits are coming hot and heavy. The updates are coming hot and heavy. Matt and Christian are killing it. Matt's working so hard. I asked him for a thumbnail yesterday for Power Hour. He said, yes, I'm on it. Fell asleep. He just passed out, probably at his computer. That's how hard he's working. It's okay. We got a thumbnail going anyway. But there's a lot going on. Very exciting time for Notre Dame football fans. What are the vibes? I feel like there's a cautious, optimistic vibe percolating through Irish Nation. What are you thinking about that?
Yeah, I think that's the way to kind of put it right now. I think everything, as like Mike said yesterday, like it's all like when they get to the actual announcements and right up to it, that people should start to kind of really kind of like more formulate their thoughts of what's going to happen. But right now, I think, coming off of that visit weekend, I would say, was pretty successful. And they did what they're supposed to do, right? Like they're putting them in a position to win pretty much all of those recruitments. Some it might be tougher to overcome, but they're in a good position to land like several of the key guys or most of the key guys that were there. Right. So I think it's going to be interesting to kind of see where it is. I rarely do you ever bat 1,000 on that kind of weekend. So I would say I'd probably be surprised if they land every single one of the guys that, all the vibes are good, just because it can change. But I do think that they're going to land like a good amount of them.
Yeah. It's like when you put it as in like that, where it's like, what are the odds they land all these guys? Right. You would say they're low, just because the odds are that that's not how it'll go. It usually doesn't. But if you look at them in a vacuum, you could see like, well, I could see why Joey O'Brien would pick Notre Dame, or I could see why Kari Adams or Caden Finley or whoever it might be. Like when you look at it that way, it becomes a little bit more realistic. And I think the way that Mike started the show yesterday, people said he put cold water on everything. He's just speaking from experience where after the visit, there's a lot of reports that Notre Dame feels good or Notre Dame feels great about this guy. They feel like they knocked it out of the park and this, that, and the other. And it's not to say that they're wrong about that. It's not to say that they are, pumping people a bunch of false optimism, whatever it might be. It's just like, that's the nature of how these visits go. And so Mike is just trying to say like, hey, it's great that everyone feels good after the visit, but once it's time to start making your decision, that's when you want to hear the positive news, right? Where, Joey O'Brien's committing on Friday, right? Are we hearing positive things about him on Thursday or Wednesday or whatever it might be as we get closer to it? Obviously, after the visit, he's going to feel great, right? Kind of the same thing with Caden Finley, Jamie, where it seemed like Notre Dame was really trending away. And now it seems like they're kind of in the driver's seat for him, but he does have to go to Texas. He does have to, and there's no getting around it. Like it's his home school or his dad's school. It's in his home state, right? There's a great pull to go play wide receiver at Texas. So we just got to be just patient with it and understand the good feelings on Monday may not be the good feelings on Wednesday. And so just hold your horses on that sort of thing. One player that we're starting to feel a lot better about is Preston Friselle, tight end, 3-star tight end out of Ohio. Jamie, I'm just going to call it right now. You guys were very, very effusive in your praise of him. I think that you both kind of said like this guy is a take no matter what. For me, this guy is a football player, and he's a good football player. And I'll call it right now. I don't know where he ends up. If he ends up at Notre Dame, this is a 3rd-round pick minimum. He's good. I love his game. I love how he plays. He's going to get bigger. He plays in the slot right now. He does so many things in the slot that would cause anyone problems in any high school. I think this is huge. I think you have to take him. If Premer wants to come, I know he's visiting. I think it might be today. Premer's going to be on campus. I think Mike is exactly right. You tell Premer when he leaves, like, hey, you either want in, you tell us you want in or not, and we're moving on Jacobson and Friselle. To me, Friselle, you got to go in on him. You got to land him. I think he's that kind of a talent. I'll put up some tape right now. We showed it yesterday, but we'll go over it again if people missed it. I think this is a special player, and Notre Dame's got to land him. What say you, Jamie?
Yeah, well, I gave him a much higher rating than anyone else. I give him a grade of 92. He's someone to me that when you just see things of what he does and his athletic ability, his speed, the way he understands leverage and, just able to create separation through leverage, also just like using his body to create separation. He is a very highly skilled receiver, very highly skilled.
Yeah.
When he's 220 pounds right now, he's going to get obviously quite a bit bigger. He's also not soft. Like when people think that, oh, he's just a big receiver who like doesn't like to block. You can watch him block on the perimeter and he gets after it. Like he really gets after it. He's a threat after the catch. I think, Iowa was in on him very early, right? Like Iowa was, basically considered the favorite for him.
Yeah.
Before kind of Notre Dame got involved. And I think Iowa, if you're going to look at where tight ends, you say Notre Dame and Iowa, the two best at, identifying and developing tight ends.
Mm-hmm.
I actually don't even think it's close really with anyone else. Because it's a lot different than, LSU or some SEC team that signs like a 5-star freak, right? Like that's not the same as what Notre Dame and Iowa do, where there's been a lot of guys from Notre Dame that, I mean, they obviously signed quite a few blue chips, but they signed a lot of guys like Friselle where, he is underrated probably just because he's from the Midwest or something that he doesn't, maybe he hasn't been in enough camps to really get the kind of exposure to have the verified testing or whatnot. But he's a stud. And really, like he said, one of the guys that he models this game after is Sam Laporta, who's obviously an Iowa tight end.
Yeah.
And that's the guy he actually reminds me a lot of, is Sam Laporta, who also was a guy who was criminally underrated, developed into, he was basically just a big receiver, just like Friselle. And then they developed him into a tight end, and he became a second-round pick for the Detroit Lions. Mike Martin, the Detroit Lions, obviously there's that connection there. Mike Martin was the guy who offered him. That's a guy. That's obviously there's something there. And I think for Notre Dame fans, and I know people will say, "Oh, this is crazy" or whatever, but there is very much Tyler Eifert vibes with him when you're thinking about a guy who is a really like great athlete with just great body control and really good ball skills that could develop into something, special, right? And obviously, it's going to take development to do that. He's not going to be a guy, just like Eifert wasn't a guy who came in and like lit it up as a true freshman. I don't expect that from him. Although you will see what happens with him as a senior in high school. But I think he's got, the sky's the limit in terms of just his ceiling. Like I think he's got a super, super high ceiling. And Premer, I think, is, a better prospect just today. But the ceiling is like the same for both those guys. They could just both be just like outstanding.
Yeah, like what are you gonna be, right? And that's kind of how you look at it with him. I love the run after catch stuff. To me, is special because that shows you, like, when you can change direction and get up the field and put moves on guys, like that shows route running ability. The ability to change direction with the ball is how you would change direction without the ball. Like that's something that that's something I really liked about Mitchell Evans when he was coming out, where like he was doing a lot of wildcat stuff as quarterback, but the way that he was maneuvering around the line of scrimmage, it was like, well, that's route running. That shows feet, right? That shows quick feet. That shows good hips. Like that shows all those things. And the fact that the way that they use him for jump balls, they use him up the seam, they use him over the middle. Like he has a varied skill set that you can kind of see already. I don't know. I just really like him. To me, this is where like I get on my high horse about rankings are a sham. I don't care about his rankings. I really don't. A 3-star. It's kind of like Vallejo to me, where it's like, I know what he's ranked. I also know what I'm looking at. I feel very strongly about him. He'll be like, if he joins the class, there's a lot of positive momentum here. If he joins the class, he'd be one of my favorite players in the class because I just think he's that talented. And so hopefully, they can make that happen because he would be a great addition to what they're looking at, especially juxtaposed with Evan Jacobson, who is kind of the opposite to me. He's more of an inline guy. He's more of that inline, like, I don't know if he's like Brock Wright size, but like he's just that's kind of his game. And so as a duo, I think that would really be beneficial to Notre Dame should they land those guys. But that's a little bit up in the air. We have to eliminate some players from Notre Dame's board. There was a lot of hope about offensive tackle Ekene Igboko. It looks like he's going to be committing to, I think, probably Georgia. I think that was the word. He's not going to make his visit. He's going to make his commitment known very soon. And so he's not visiting Notre Dame. So he's going to be out. Jamie, how big of a loss is this for Notre Dame should they not land Grayson McHugh here?
I mean, it's a definite loss, but I wouldn't say that Notre Dame they never had him. Like I never thought that.
Well, I mean, not lost, but like it's after Igboko and after McHugh, I worded that poorly. I apologize. After those guys, the board is kind of unclear. Is this like, would they even grab anybody else? So how much would be missing from the O-line class overall should you not land one of these two guys?
I mean, I think it's a really good O-line class, right, even without that. But I did think that it goes up a level, obviously, if you land, one of those guys. And Igboko is obviously like a pretty special prospect. So, yeah, it does change like the overall dynamic if you could land a guy like that. But and even with McHugh too, because I think that McHugh, just in terms of like his ceiling, it's a lot like Friselle, where it's similar. I think where you're like talking about a guy who, the ceiling is extremely high for him, but I don't think it's not like a killer, because you always look at it with the class before and what they have in the class before, and you really like the tackles in the class before. Obviously, I really like the interior guys that they're landing in this class. So, and I do think Patrick can play. Gregory Patrick can play tackle and is a very good prospect. He's going to be a good player. Like I think he probably has the highest floor out of all the guys that they got in this class. So, I don't think it's like one of those things. I wouldn't put it. To me, those are luxury additions rather than when we're talking about the Caden Finleys, the the Corey Adams, the O'Briens, like those guys are more of like critically important because of the needs at the position.
Yeah, so I just wanted to kind of give people an overview of that, right? It's obviously anytime you have a chance at a highly ranked player like Igboko, or you have an opportunity to bring him on campus and you don't land him, people will like that. But people like the highly rated guys, but we do need to look at the class overall. I know you're very high on this class, and I know you've really like, especially Sullivan Garvin, whose mother is a invaluable poster of the pics and all these things on the social media, on X, the everything app. So that's great. But for the overall online class, I know you're very high on them. Just wanted to bring some kind of context to that sort of thing. Obviously, it's unfortunate to miss on Iboko like that. Hopefully they land McHugh, and that can like really round out the class. But they got a good class overall. A spot where things are a little bit more unclear is wide receiver. Jaden Warren is not taking his visit this weekend. He is eliminated Notre Dame. It looks like he has SMU, Houston, and who is it? Who is the third? I can't remember. Was it TCU?
I can't remember.
Maybe.
Yeah, it might be TCU. Yeah.
It might be TCU. It's one of the Texas schools. And so Notre Dame's out. Look, so there's two ways to look at this. Neither of us were particularly high on him, and we spoke about this numerous times, right? So it's not like one of these things where it's like, oh, he's not coming to Notre Dame, and so therefore he's not a big loss. Like his track times are his track times. It never really showed on the field. I never really like. I would rather have Brian Williams. I'd rather have Cohen Brown. I'd rather have obviously Caden Finley. I'd rather have Braden Robinson. I think Braden Robinson's a better football player, and his speed shows up on tape. Size, notwithstanding. That being said, this was a Jaden Warren decision, not a Notre Dame decision. And they spent time with him and they put effort into this, and now he's not visiting, right? So he's off the board. It's unclear about Brian Williams and whether he's going to visit. It doesn't sound like he's going to visit. There's good vibes around Devin Fitzgerald, and that's good. There's good vibes around.
He just canceled his North Carolina visit, by the way.
Devin Fitzgerald?
Yes.
We're monitoring that situation.
Increase the vibes for Devin Fitzgerald. So I think that paints
confidence.
That paints the picture, I think, of yes, Jaden Warren decided to cancel the visit. I don't think they would have taken him anyways. That's my view.
So here's the thing. Because there are multiple ways to look at this stuff, right? In terms of was he a take for Notre Dame? Maybe he knew he wasn't a take for Notre Dame when he comes, right? He's kind of a backup plan. We don't know where, like, Notre Dame didn't cancel it, but maybe he kind of felt the vibes. There's vibes around Devin Fitzgerald, right? Like this all happens when Devin Fitzgerald's kind of bumping up there. They fit the same kind of mold, right? They're going to be that outside receiver, maybe that boundary receiver, right? So if Fitzgerald's spot is taken, right, or the Fitzgerald Warren spot is taken, and maybe Warren can read the tea leaves there and moves on. You always had Fitzgerald in your kind of, where we were asked who's your dream class at wide receiver. You would put him on there. So why is that? Again, just to remind people, not everyone is listens to every show or watches every show. Why is that? Why would he be a take for you over someone like Jaden Warren or even Cohen Brown at the time, who has ended up at Texas? But I was a Cohen Brown guy. Always wanted him in the class. You were a Devin Fitzgerald guy from the beginning. Kind of why were you on that? Why are you on that boat?
Well, I think it's a lot of it is size and what he will play. Like, I think he's a boundary, right? So, I think he can play other spots, but I think his spot is going to be boundary, and they need a boundary. Like, they need a boundary. So that's why, like, if they didn't get Devin Fitzgerald, then Brian Williams becomes like a guy that, like, wow, they really need to get this guy, like that kind of thing, right? So I think that's why he's important. And I just look at it in the portal too, of how it's hard. Like, it sounds like Malachi Fields. I mean, there's a lot there that was probably the best possible boundary guy that they could have got, obviously. And like, and he might be just fantastic this year. We're hearing lots of great things, but that guy isn't always available, and it's also hard to get him. And you want to have, Micah Gilbert. You want to have Cam Williams, who's working the boundary. You want to have multiple big bodies, fast dudes at the boundary that can win their one-on-one, win back shoulder, do these things there. And I think it's just an important thing. So it's not that I would say, like, straight up, like Cohen Brown. I think if you just said, who would you just take without knowing any of the needs, I think you'd probably say Cohen Brown. I would rate him slightly above Devin Fitzgerald, but that's not what it's about, though, right? It's about, like, what the team needs and stuff too. Yeah. So I think, from that perspective, that's why I think that Fitzgerald is a super important player, and hopefully, like, this is a good sign that they're going to land him, because, you get him, and then we'll see with Caden Finley. But that, I mean, if they end with Fitzgerald and Finley, that's a really, really strong wide receiver class. That's a really strong wide receiver class, and probably one of the best ones that they've had in quite some time, right? Just in terms of, like, up and down from there. And yes, you would like to see maybe more of, like, a high-end guy, like a high-end top 50-ish guy. You'd love to kind of see that, but really, just, like, I think all those guys have a chance to be really, really good players. Before I just go on, because Jason Smith, I just noticed that I said Gregory Patrick has the highest floor out of the O-line class. That's who I said. So.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Got you. I'll just put it up here. He asked the question, who has the highest floor, that Uyeyama said in the O-line class. He said Gregory Patrick. So that's good. I wanted to ask you about Larry Fitzgerald as it relates to, I guess, someone like Caden Finley, and maybe the position overall. They got Plaxico Burress' son last year, Elijah. Plaxico Burress, obviously a very accomplished wide receiver. I do think Larry Fitzgerald has a little bit more cachet with players today, like high school players. He's just a different caliber, right? Like, this is a first ballot,
one of the all-time greats.
Yeah. Like, this is a first ballot Hall of Famer,
probably a top 5 receiver of all time.
Yeah, and not just that, but there's a technical aspect to his game too, right? Where, like, someone like him understands the sport, and the fact that he is green-lighting his son to play wide receiver at Notre Dame, not just to play at Notre Dame, because sometimes it's you get in the thing where it's like, hey, my son is a football player, play at Notre Dame, that's great, right? But, like, to play wide receiver at Notre Dame, where Notre Dame has had trouble there, right? How meaningful is that to someone like Caden Finley, who it's like his dad is a tight end, right? And that's wide receiver, right? So, or like a receiving position. So, his opinion on this will have cachet as well. But for Larry Fitzgerald, who doesn't have any ties to Notre Dame, went to Pitt, he played in the NFL at Arizona, right? Like he doesn't have ties to Notre Dame at all. For him to be like, yeah, I want my son to play at Notre Dame as a wide receiver to get developed there. How meaningful is that? Not just for Kadon Finley or whatever, but just for Mike Brown, that position, the narrative around Notre Dame receivers. Like, how big of a deal do you think that might be?
I never thought of it in that way. I guess it could be a really big deal, but I don't know. Really, to be honest, I don't know how much the kids today, kids, like, they don't know, like,
they don't know anything.
They don't know, like, guys who played, like, 3 years ago who the best receiver in the NFL was. There's a lot of that. Like, there's a lot of that there. So I don't know how big in terms of for, like, recruits, maybe the dads, like you said, like, of, like, Jermichael Finley or something like that. But I will say, when you have a bunch of guys who were very successful NFL players, guys who had long careers, obviously Hall of Famers, some of them too. Like, but when that happens and you have so many of these guys there that these guys are going to show up to games and be there every weekend. They're going to be the parents who are there, friends with the other parents, for years and all that kind of stuff. A lot of them obviously are doing pretty well financially. Will buy homes, around Notre Dame or rent homes or whatever and be around there. And it does say something when all of these guys are like, yeah, I'm trusting, Notre Dame to coach my son, to take care of my son and all that, like do all that kind of stuff. So I think that is really massive because there's so many of these guys today. It's not like there haven't been, former pros that have played for, gone to Notre Dame before, but there is way more of these guys. Obviously there's so many of these guys of the Holtz generation of like those great Holtz teams that are having kids that are going to Notre Dame now. So that's something that has been, has kind of stood out, but it's just like they didn't land these guys before. And I don't know if they were always going to like the alma mater of their school and stuff like that. But here's a perfect example. Thomas Davis Jr.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
He took the official to Georgia, but he basically did it just because he's like out of respect for his dad. But he didn't immediately flip what he was going to do. He was like, I want to go to Notre Dame. And believe me, if his dad didn't think Notre Dame was good enough or he wasn't going to get developed at Notre Dame or this wasn't a good thing, his dad would be like, hell no. Come on, Georgia's on the table now. That's how it would go, right? And obviously he would let his son make the final decision, but he would be in his ear about that if he didn't think it was a good fit for him. So I think when you have that, and when you have Fitzgerald, who went, someone mentioned, about Pitt. I don't know if Larry Fitzgerald was ever. He doesn't strike me as one of these guys who's ever hated any kind of thing. He just seems like one of the classiest players of all time. So I don't know if he really ever hated Notre Dame, like maybe some guys hated Notre Dame, and I don't think Pitt. It's different, like Pitt rivalry back in the day. Like way back in the day compared to even when, Larry Fitz was doing his thing at Pitt, animosity towards Notre Dame was probably a lot different, in the 70s than it was in like, the 90s or whatever. But, it's not like a slam dunk. First of all, does this guy really want to go play for Pat Narduzzi? You got to get in our shots at Narduzzi here. No one wants to go there when they're talking about not throwing the ball. And just like, we got to throw it less after our quarterback goes in the first round and breaks records. But just when they are doing that kind of thing and saying, yeah, giving that stamp of approval, that validates so much for Notre Dame. It validates, obviously, Marcus Freeman. Marcus Freeman is a huge part of it. Let's be honest. It is a huge, huge thing.
Yeah.
Because those guys who played respect Marcus Freeman. They absolutely respect him, and that matters.
I mean, it just, like the correlation is undeniable. Marcus Freeman's the head coach, and now all of a sudden they're getting a bunch of former NFL players, right? Like it just, it's like you can't deny it. I think your point about Thomas Davis is really good, and maybe even more powerful for someone like Caden Finley, where it's like, hey, my dad played at Georgia. He was a star at Georgia, and then they offered him, and then he went and visited, but it's like he's going to Notre Dame, And I think the difference, there's a lot of similarities there where Georgia was late on Davis. Texas was kind of late on Finley. They didn't really push him the way that Notre Dame has, and that might cost them. It might cost them. I am not as, I've kind of been, people are asking me about Finley and everything, and I think it just really seems like Finley wants to go to Notre Dame today. Right now, people change their mind all the time, and he could go on a visit to Texas and be like, you know what, this is right for me. I think I've likened it to the Davis visit with Georgia, but I did not, when Davis went to Georgia, I did not think there was a real chance that he would flip. I do think there is a real chance that Finley could decide he's going to go to Texas. Like that is a real possibility, and so people need to be open to that. As positive as the vibes might be today, he could just decide Texas is the place. And it would be unfortunate. I do have to give Mike Brown credit, and the recruiting staff credit. I did not think we'd be at this place with Finley right now with this much kind of, I don't want to say hope. I guess we'll say optimism, for lack of a better way to put it. I think they've done a really good job with this recruitment, if not for, the fact that he has the ties to Texas that he does. I think they've done really well. Let's talk about Braden Robinson. It's so funny. I don't know anything about, we've done multiple buy or sells on Braden Robinson. We're not doing that anymore. Whatever happens. I don't know what to make of this recruitment. He's one of the ones where I thought coming out of it, I thought that it would be like clear what's going on. There's no clarity here. And I just have to, I have to kind of just kneel to your take on him. There's size concerns that they're apparently hard for not just him, but or not for Notre Dame, but like maybe a lot of schools are concerned about this with the speed. It's just, it's unclear where he's at with this. And I just, again, he's fast. He's got a lot of juice. The size, it's got to be turning people off a little bit. Cause I feel like if they really, really pushed, we'd know there'd be a lot more clarity. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, no, I would agree with that. But it does seem like, I mean, if we're talking about where things stand, and I think they're probably going to only want 4, but we'll see. Like, I would say he is kind of like the kind of borderline there of like, well, Finley decides Texas, then it would be like, well, and say they get Fitzgerald,
yeah,
then it would be Robinson would be that next guy. So that's the way I kind of see it with him. And like I said, there's a lot to like about him, but I think I think really kind of Bubba Fraser just took that spot. That's just how I kind of view it.
Yeah. And also the kind of, I think Notre Dame's being cautious with numbers in a way that is not clear to us, because this became kind of went on my radar with the D-line stuff, where it was like, we kind of heard, like, I think we've been surmising like, oh, they're going to take 5, could even take 6 on the D-line or whatever it might be. And then we heard like, no, they actually had to like really push for a 5th guy, and that would have been Botelho. If they're not landing him, then maybe they only want 4, right? And so I think that might be the case at wide receiver as well. Maybe they only want 4. And behind the scenes, it's been just like, hey, if you land Finley and land Fitzgerald, we're going to be done. And if it looks like Notre Dame is going to land those 2 guys, then they're looking to be finished at those positions, right? That's another thing that we talk about on these shows, where we talk about, the prospects and who they could land and everything. We don't know how many exactly Notre Dame wants to take at a certain position, right? Sometimes the position coaches have to lobby, the GM, right? Mike Martin. Hey, I want 5. It's like Mike Martin says, no, we're only taking 4 or whatever. Like they have to lobby, right? So there's a lot going on behind the scenes that we don't know about. So if a player gets slow played or whatever it might be, and we don't understand why, it's maybe because of that. So it's something to keep in mind. Speaking of the D-line, Dre Quinn, his visit was off, his visit was on, and now his visit is off again. I think he's going to announce this week sometime.
Yeah, I think he's announcing the Thursday,
right? So he's out. He is not going to visit Notre Dame, so he is not going to be it. Elijah Golden is the main focus for Notre Dame. He was just at Alabama. I think it's public knowledge. Keon Keeley was his host there. So that's interesting, an interesting wrinkle. Elijah Golden is a huge part of the D-line class at this point. I think I don't want to say all their eggs are in one basket with him for the remaining board. I think if this doesn't work out, they would have to, if they like a 4th guy, hasn't really been offered yet. Maybe they could circle back to Marcus Almada, right? But I don't know. That'd be kind of tough. They'd have to, do some convincing on that front. But Elijah Golden's there. How much do you think they need Elijah Golden in this class? I know there's a narrative point of view from, not landing your top target. They've been on him for so long. That would be a huge miss to not get a guy that they've been on for literally years. But just from what they already have in the class, how big of a miss would it be if they didn't land Elijah Golden?
I think it would be a pretty big miss because, like you said, all the time invested into him, and I think too of like what the other need in the class. And I think he's a guy who I think is likely going to grow into and be a 3-tech, in college. So I think from that perspective, that's what the class needs and what the roster needs. So, and they don't really have like, if there was a choice of like saying, well, they could have got Kari Wilder or him or something like that, then you'd say, okay, well, if they didn't land Golden and they got Wilder, well, then that would be, it wouldn't be as good because of the time spent or whatever, but it would still be like in a good spot. And right now, like you said, they would go onto a different plan and you'd have to see where it is. It doesn't mean that it couldn't be good, but it just means that it's not the ideal. And I'm sure they already have something in place of what they want to do. Right. I mean, I know for a fact they do, but like, it's just one of these things where he's just so important because if that's what it is, then they're able to kind of just shut it down and say like, well, we got our 4 and we love our 4, and I think that's what it really ultimately comes down to. And really, I think if you're looking at like a kind of a 4-man D-line class, that's probably the best 4 that I would say that they had since, I would say 2016. Which obviously that was Aquara, Kareem, Hayes, and Ogundeji as the kind of wild card, whatever. This one, I mean, they wouldn't even say they have a wild card. They're all just guys who are highly ranked studs.
Yeah. Another player visiting this weekend, Jamie, is Donovan Webb out of Frisco, Texas. We haven't talked about him kind of at all, which is, hand up on that. That's our bad. This is an official visitor. We haven't really discussed. He's a safety. I'll throw up his tape now. I'll tell you what.
He's good.
There's some Adon Schuler vibes going on for me here. I like him. I like the attitude that he plays with. I like the versatility. He's making plays off the hash. He's making plays at the line of scrimmage. He's making plays over the middle. He's making plays on offense. He's making plays in special teams. I'm in. This is a big time football player for me, Jamie.
And apologies to our boss, Mike Frank, but I like Webb quite a bit more than Reddish.
It's hard because Reddish doesn't have that junior film, but yeah.
Yeah, but just based off what I've seen, and he's so productive.
Yeah,
he is so productive.
This is why I said that. This is why I said the Schuler thing. Like he was just a ball hawk in high school. Schuler was.
I think that's something too with safeties, and it's something that obviously when I think about like Mike Mickens and obviously what he's looking for at safety, it's pretty obvious he playmaking, ball production, like because if you're not finding the ball in high school, the odds of you being a guy who finds the ball, and tracks it well and does all these things and makes and finishes plays. Yes, it's something you can learn, and there's some skill to obviously getting better at like punching the ball out or creating things that you can improve as a tackler, all of these kind of things. But when you're already this productive, like that's a really good sign going forward. And he's someone that size wise, he needs to physically develop still. So there's, that kind of question. He needs to add weight, but I just think like in terms of his skill set and what he can do, and all the things like you said too, like just in terms of him checking all of these boxes of what role he can play. Safeties, you have to be multiple if you want to play in this level of college football, and you want to play Notre Dame's defense. You got to be multiple. You can't be a box guy. You can't just be a deep guy. You have to do all this. You have to be able to scream downhill and make a play on the perimeter. And those are the guys that Notre Dame wants in their NFL style defense. That's what the NFL wants.
Yeah.
And this guy already shows he can do that kind of thing. So I'm a huge fan of his. And, like I do like Nick Reddish. I don't want to say like, I don't, I just prefer Webb. So I don't want to say like it's not like a disparaging thing against Reddish. I just prefer Webb's film. I think to me, how could it not pop? The guy's just incredible, makes an incredible amount of plays.
There's so many times when I watch his tape there and I think to myself, oh, that's what it looks like. Like that's what it's got to look like. And it's especially at safety, like you said, there's so many responsibilities that you have and that Notre Dame requires. You don't want to be a guy where you watch them play and you think, well, I could see him doing this, but I don't know about that. Right? I don't know if he can do this part of the game, right? It's so limiting because teams can force you to do the thing that you don't really like, or you don't really, and not just that, but if the defense then caters to your strengths or like it tries to hide your weaknesses, well, then that takes away from what the defense wants to do, right? Because they're catering to another position. So I really like him. We'll see, right? I don't have a great feel, obviously, for what the chances are of Notre Dame landing him. But he would be a great addition to the class. I do want to kind of shout out Aiden Pouncey again. Matt Freeman kind of went out of his way to talk about his size and what a big football player he is. For Matt to discuss this, right, is pretty rare, right? Matt's always kind of talking about how Notre Dame isn't big enough and they don't, they step on the field with an SEC team. Some of this is Matt trolling, and that's fine, but some of it is rooted in what he truly believes. Aiden Pouncey's big boy, and you kind of look at him in the photo that they posted with all the DBs here, and he's just kind of looming over top of everybody. I think people are rightly, now focused on Joey O'Brien and Kari Adams and, Donovan Webb and Nick Reddish. Aiden Pouncey's good football player, really good addition for Notre Dame at safety.
People always forget about the guys
sure.
that have been committed, and he hasn't even been committed that long, but like people always forget about those guys. Which is also why, like, if it doesn't work out at safety here, I do think they'll be able to pivot fine and be in a good spot. But it's also because, well, they got him in the class already too, so it's a really, really good thing.
Yeah, he's good. I just wanted to flag that because he's not, like you said, we forget about the guys who are already committed. As far as Joey O'Brien and Kari Adams here, we're just continuing to monitor that situation. There's some chatter that Kari Adams might not take this upcoming visit to, I think it's Oregon, right? It's Oregon. Yeah. So he may not, that's up in the air. We're going to have to keep an eye on that. If he doesn't take that visit to Oregon, I mean, that's kind of like the Devin Fitzgerald thing. That's a really good sign for Notre Dame. Obviously, he's been very heavily linked to Penn State as well. He's already been there. So it's not like it's a slam dunk at that point, but that would be a big deal. Matt Freeman has kind of posted in his opinion from sources that he's heard from, and he reported that this might be a Notre Dame Oregon situation. I kind of like that, right? Because with Penn State, I never really bought the Clemson stuff, but with Penn State, it just they're two like programs. Like I think Penn State and Notre Dame are somewhat similar, not completely, but they're a little bit. I think Oregon is very different from Notre Dame, so it's just a question of like what kind of player is this? Is it a guy who wants that kind of lifestyle? Oregon is just kind of out there. But they are about flash. They're about pop. Notre Dame is obviously a little bit more conservative. You did note that he changed the timeline right after the Oregon visit, which is notable, right? In a negative way for Notre Dame. But that's something Notre Dame has to monitor. I don't know that we have any special insights into that, other than, he's very hard to read. I think Christian has been very like, hey, man, it's hard to get a hold of him. No one can talk to him. No one can really get a good read on him and where he's at, which is interesting. And then we just continue to monitor. There were some very good vibes about Kari Adams coming out of it. These are big time players. So we'll be keeping an eye on that, and keep an eye on irishsportsdaily.com for updates there. One last thing before we move on to kind of the football team. I didn't get an ad read going, Jamie. I've been so excited about this. I'm just going to tell you go with VSR Media for your media needs. Founded by Notre Dame football pregame host and Emmy award-winning anchor Vahid Sadrazadeh, VSR Media provides professional and cinematic video and photo. Whether you're looking for a collegiate or pro-level highlight reel, have a personal story to tell, or are aiming to diversify and grow your business, VSR Media specializes in short and long-form video storytelling, social media management, and website design. VSR Media also captures professional headshots, senior, and sports photos. Contact them at vsrmediacompany.com. Mention Irish Sports Daily to receive 20% off your first project. Visit them online or give them a call at 574-800-9106. Wanted to make sure I got that in before our last topic. Jordan Botelho, pec injury during workouts. He's going to be out for about 4 months. I think that puts him in line for October. It's hard because, it puts him in line for October. What does that mean? Does that mean he's ready to play in October? That means he's ready to practice in October. Kind of what does that mean there? Obviously, this is a huge blow for Botelho himself. I think he could probably sit the year and petition for a 7th. I feel like that's something that could happen, just because if an injury prevents him from playing, why wouldn't he be able to use that year? Why wouldn't he just roll it over if he wants to do that? I don't know if he wants to do that. If he comes back in October, hopefully Notre Dame's making a playoff run. He could maybe get 6-7 games in, which would be beneficial to him and the football team, of course. Just kind of talk about that first before we talk about the football team. Obviously, this is a huge bummer for him.
Huge bummer. Man, you just feel for the guy who was obviously having a fantastic start to last season, was playing his best ball of his career. Really, he's had a lot of kind of things. It's kind of a little similar to like a Kevin Austin, where he's had, a lot of kind of like ups and downs during his career. Finally, was like kind of hitting on all cylinders and was going to have, I think, the type of year that was going to put him in position to, be an NFL draft pick. And then now it's just, rebooting it again. And I don't think the loss is massive for Notre Dame in terms of the fact that, like, he didn't even play really for, 90% of last season, and they were fine without him. And I think, like, obviously you lose any kind of player, it's going to hurt in terms of like depth and what he can offer. But I also think it would be a lot worse if it was something that this happened during the season and then he was out and then he was basically out for the season.
Yeah.
So, like you said, we don't know about when he'll be back, what he'll be back to right away. Obviously, there's going to be some rust for him too. And we'll see, because every timeline is different and everything can change. But let's just say he's back for USC, which is October 18th, right? So that's mid-October. If he's back for USC and then they have, 5 other games after that, that's 6 games regular season. Well, if they want to make a playoff run, he's going to be an important guy for them.
Yeah.
And I think about like Charles Jagusaw, who obviously missed the whole season, but then came back, and that's super important guy for Notre Dame. And we also don't know what the injury situation, if someone, another edge, is going to get hurt during the year, and then all of a sudden it's like, wow, they really need Botelho right now to come back, and then that's going to be exactly what they need at that time. Or he's just a guy who's adding to an already strength, and it's there. So I think it could turn out to be a really good thing for him and the team, because he could have 6 regular season games. I mean, could have like a few more games like that too, if they go as far as they want to. So, and that would be absolutely kind of massive, because I think about that. I think about Jagusaw last year. I think about, like, say, Blake Fisher in 2021, where he was able to come back for the bowl game and then play there. Well, imagine if he stepped in and then all of a sudden he got to play like 3 games at the end of the year instead, or whatever. And that's what it could be now, right? Where with guys kind of coming back and having that time. So I think it's always a shame when someone gets hurt in the summer, and especially someone who's coming off a major injury. But it also probably gives exactly more time for the knee to get right and get everything going in that direction too. So we'll see what happens. But he's a guy that I think every Notre Dame fan is just rooting for him to be able to come back and really kind of finish off on the right way. You just really hope. It always sucks whenever there's guys that, you feel like their story got changed because of injuries that really like hurt them. And fortunately for a guy like Drew Tranquil, he was able to kind of like course correct and really finish strong. And that was great. And there was obviously a lot of ups and downs with Sean Crawford and what happened with him. But ultimately, I think it, impacted what his career would be, but he still at least got to finish.
Yeah.
He still at least got to finish. And you're just hoping that's going to be the case, with Botelho, because I can't think of anything worse than like Avery Davis in his last year tearing his ACL in camp. Like that's rough. Yeah,
that's awful. As far as the Notre Dame football team, obviously they have a lot of edges. Injuries will mount up, as we know, as they do. So the good news is, like you said, if he comes back in October and if there's other injuries, then he can kind of step in for guys should they go down at that point. And he does have a chance to come back, which is good for him, right? It gives him something to work for. Unlike someone like Avery Davis, like you said, his season was basically ended before it even began. One thing I would like to, we're going to have a lot of like mailbags. I don't want to answer the question this year of who can they least afford to lose or something like that. And the reason for that is we just went through a year where they literally lost everyone who we ever would have put on that list at this point last year. And they went 14-2 and played for a national championship and were the best Notre Dame team by the numbers since like 1993 or something like that. It's kind of a pointless exercise. It truly is. Everyone, like literally everyone, if we made the list a year ago today, it would have been Ben Morrison. It would have been Charles Jagusaw for sure. Ashton Craig would have made the list. I think Botelho and Traore would have made the list. They lose Riley Mills at one point. Howard Cross is injured the entire season. These are the most important players on the team. I just it doesn't matter. Like, truly, the situation comes up and the team just adjusts and you move on. And I don't want to have the conversation. It's impossible to have. We can't have it right. It's just, so please, when we do the mailbags, don't ask me. It's like Jamie's, don't ask me to guess the O-line configuration. Yeah. Like, don't ask us who the most indispensable or that they can least afford to lose. I don't want to have the conversation. It's just like, it's not worth it. There's no point. We're going to be wrong. They've proven us over and over again. Like, there's not really anyone who falls into that category. Obviously, it would be horrible if they lost any number of players, but you adjust and move on. It just, I don't want to have that combo anymore.
Yeah. And I think too, Notre Dame, where they're at as a program, is much different than where they were 10 years ago, 5 years ago, where, they lose somebody and it's devastating, and they don't have anybody else the drop off is so massive that it just becomes untenable, that they can't win to a point anymore. Right. Like this isn't 2015 or 2014 when, the end of the year, they have guys dropping like flies on defense, and they just, it just goes just terribly. Right. Yeah. Where they don't have anybody else to really kind of step up. It's just a completely different time in terms of where the roster's at, and how many guys can step up, are capable of stepping up, and are being developed, who maybe we haven't heard that much from. Like, I just think of a guy like Kanukia, for all I know, could end up being an extremely important player for Notre Dame this year, if just things broke a certain way. We just don't know. And because I think he can be a really, really good player, and we'll see if opportunity presents itself, and then he becomes a guy that all of a sudden is like, wow, he just kind of came out of nowhere. Like there was a lot of that last year. No one was saying Junior Tuihalamaka, man. I think there was a lot of people were thinking like Notre Dame's in trouble. He played really, really well.
Yeah. So I don't want to have a combo. We don't have to have it. All right. We can talk about other things. There's so many other things to talk about. So just a request, please. Don't put it in the questions. All right. But we can end it there. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. If you like what you hear or like what you heard, please hit that like. Please hit subscribe. Please hit the notification bell. So whenever it is we're going live, we'll be back with more recruiting updates, I'm sure. Hopefully some news will come in by the end of the week. And then we'll move forward. We press on. So have a good rest of your day, everyone. We'll talk to you soon. Keep hitting and hustling.